Before we begin, this video is based on our own experience with Vampires Bloodlord Rising, and reflects our personal views on what it offers and how it feels to play. As always, we recommend you make your own informed call by looking into the game yourself and ensuring it matches your expectations, standards, and personal values. With that out of the way, let's begin. Open world survival games are far from a new concept today, and we've seen studios of all sizes take the genre on from every conceivable angle. With Vampires Bloodlord Rising, Mehuman Games doesn't so much try to reinvent the wheel as it does remix, refine, and build on ideas we've seen work before. Not all of these ambitions land right away though, and as an early access release, it'll likely take time for this vampiric take on the survival formula to fully come together. Mehuman's entry sets itself apart thanks to its third-person camera, emphasis on automation through minions that you will bring to your side, and a more involved social system where you actually get to walk among regular human beings, instead of only seeing them as prey. In a little over 7 hours of solo play, I got a solid look at several of Vampires Bloodlord Rising's core systems. While many survival games tend to treat their stories as afterthoughts, it matters here, along with providing the framing device of you and your fellow vampires being forced into hiding when the Inquisition invades, only to awaken years later and start reclaiming the land. We also get a good idea about our protagonist, Dragos. Dragos, who wants little more than to fulfill the wishes of his missing master. The earlier parts of the story also provide some great objectives that essentially serve as the main tutorial. Songavia feels like a mashup of classic dark fantasy and gothic imagery. It is an era of castles, where villagers largely live in stone houses, and where the Inquisition is more than happy to take over a village to ensure that the land is cleansed of vampiric filth. While far from an original setting, Songavia is still fairly fun to explore, thanks to its surprisingly varied biomes. It starts you out in an idyllic zone, but before long you'll need to expand your influence into nearby regions, each of which represents a specific biome. Hell's Chasm, for instance, is a fiery land full of minerals to mine. The Fey Marshes, on the other hand, are a swampy zone full of alchemical ingredients. The world is surprisingly large for an early access release. Thankfully, however, traveling around never feels tedious thanks to a plethora of fast travel points in the form of stagecoaches, as well as your own high movement speed. Owing to its size, the world can sometimes feel a bit sparse, and while there are plenty of points of interest dotted all over the map, they also tend to be separated by long stretches of dull scenery. These points of interest are also little more than camps of Inquisitors that you can fight, with your reward being skill points. There's also a day-night cycle that feels essentially meaningless here. You can return to your castle at any moment by holding down a button, which means that you're never really in danger of being caught out while the sun is shining. That's convenient because being out during the day rapidly drains your health and blood reserves until you die or find some shade. Progression here is quite gradual, and when you venture into these new zones, it's left up to you. The Inquisition has cast a spell that blocks you from going to any of these zones at the beginning, and only by continuously feeding your own castle's core, strongly implied to be your master, can you start slowly banishing this spell area by area. While you're at your castle, however, there are still plenty of chores to take care of. You need to shelter from the sunlight, for example, which means building a coffin to sleep in. You also need to get your hands on basic crafting materials, things like lumber, limestone, clay, and mud, which can then be used to create more ambitious structures. The general UI UX for crafting feels fine. While it does take a bit to get used to, none of the crafting menus feel out of place, and it starts feeling quite intuitive once you've got a handle on things and a vision for how your castle should look. While you can take care of all of these chores yourself, Vampires Bloodlord Rising provides a more fun solution here: minions. At any moment, you can head into town to mingle with humans. As long as you're wearing your noble attire, they won't run at first sight, and will even go so far as paying you a nightly tribute. Chatting with townsfolk quickly fills your journal with rumors about potential candidates that you can turn into vampires. These rumors reveal special skills and affinities they might have, as well as any possible bad habits, such as stealing. Once you've picked an appropriate target and transformed them, they will join you at your castle awaiting your orders. Once I had 2 minions running, one gathering materials and another refining them at a workbench, I noticed just how much waiting the game asks of you. Especially early on, where you don't have access to tools and other equipment that could speed your minions up, they tend to work at a glacial pace. Adding more minions can actually compound the problem, creating bottlenecks that actually weren't there before. For instance, if your gathering minion can't find mud or sand, your clay production will grind to a halt, which in turn means that any building blueprints you've laid down aren't getting built. This also has the annoying side effect of flooding the top left corner of your screen with messages about how one of your minions can't find or make something. Even your own personal crafting-based progression feels quite bottlenecked. You don't get many options for armor upgrades for several hours, even if you've been actively exploring as much of the world as you can. Your only real choice, ultimately, is to rely on the skill point-based progression system, which also sort of feels like a mixed bag here. While there are several interesting abilities throughout the skill tree, getting to those nodes requires a fair bit of grinding, and in the meantime, you will be stuck with minor stat gains like increased health or blood capacity. Now, speaking of blood, you are a vampire after all, the need to feed doesn't ever feel particularly pressing in Vampires Bloodlord Rising. It drains slowly over time, and you're given the choice of feeding on humans, who will top you up very quickly at the risk of witnesses alerting the Inquisition to your presence, or feeding on animals. The latter, depending on their size of course, can be a surprisingly sustainable way of maintaining your blood reserves, and offers little risk or effort beyond chasing down a deer or a rabbit. The fact that blood doesn't feel like a resource you have to constantly worry about maintaining is welcome, since a lot of your progression to other zones is blocked off by the blood reserves of your castle's core. Combat is one of the areas where the lack of polish is most obvious. Fights often devolve into spamming attack strings, punctuated by the occasional counter or dodge. This simple combat system starts feeling even jankier if the terrain you're fighting on is uneven, with enemies being unable to climb down a rock, and even my own character often slipping off surfaces mid-combo. Beyond packs of Inquisitors, enemy encounter variety is thin right now. For variety, one of them might even be heavily armored. Visually speaking, Vampires Bloodlord Rising is a mixed bag. While the environment art is often great, and vistas look gorgeous from a high enough vantage point, get up close and you'll find muddy textures and bland character designs. Even the differences between the biomes don't really help in this regard, since you are essentially choosing between a bland-looking mountain or a dull forest, or a green and brown swamp. Thankfully, the audio has been fine throughout, and while far from outstanding to be sure, at least voice lines don't randomly clip out mid-sentence. Now, in its current state, Vampires Bloodlord Rising can offer anywhere between 10 and 20 hours of playtime before the loop starts to feel repetitive. Playing with friends can extend this playtime somewhat, since there is plenty of fun to be had in collaboratively designing and building a castle. However, the lack of interesting boss fights, along with the grindiness of its survival elements, makes it difficult to recommend just yet. There's definitely a strong foundation here, but the game is simply needing a lot more polish and content, like boss fights, more enemy variety, and a tighter crafting economy. So, what are your thoughts on this? Go ahead and share them in the comments below. And if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel and enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon to get new video updates. We upload every day and would really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching.